Hey there, I am here hosting an open house for a colleague, and I figured I'd pop in and talk to you a little bit about negotiations through inspections and repair addendums and things like that, as I just recently negotiated through two with buyer clients, one of which had quite a bit come up. Um, so when you have your inspections done, and for a detached home here in Portland, it's common to do a general home inspection, a radon test, an underground storage tank search, and a sewer scope. You get those done, you see, what big issues have come up, and then you hire, or not really hire, but request that specialists and experts that address those things come out to give you bids and see what you're taking on or what the potential total would be to mitigate those issues. And then once you have all your information, when you're coordinating with the seller, and it's really dependent on the seller and what needs they have. Some sellers just need to liquidate property and so would rather give credit than deal with repairs. Some sellers would rather have control and like choosing who they hire to get work done and maybe even find the best deal. But you usually, at least here in Portland, you ask for either a credit towards closing costs and prepaids so that the buyer has those funds after closing and after the transfer of deed to do some of those projects without spending extra money out of their pocket. And then the other option is to ask sellers to do specific repairs. And usually those repairs have to happen before the transaction can fund and close. There are some situations where you can do escrow holdbacks. For instance, if like a sewer repair project can't happen until after closing, it's something you would have to ask the lender and ask the escrow company you're working with to make sure that's possible and for the amount that would be needed. But most of the time you're trying to figure all that out before the loan funds and can record. Since both of these transactions have now moved beyond the inspection period, one only got credit from the seller, the other is getting both credit and repairs from the seller. We're now moving on to the appraisal contingency. And the appraisal is done mainly for the lender. They're making sure that the house or the property they're loaning on is worth what it's being bought for in the current condition it's in. There have been some situations where a property appraises at value with no required repairs, and then others where there are lender required repairs. And that means usually the seller has to take care of those lender required issues before the lender will fund the loan for the buyer. So most commonly here, that's like a water heater not having two straps on it, or decks or staircases not having handrails. Depending on the financing, it could include chipped paint on the exterior. Obviously, if there's no heat source to bedrooms, that could be called out. If the house doesn't have a stove or an oven, that can be called out as a lender required repair. So even when you get through inspections and that contingency, know that you typically, if you're financing through conventional FHA, VA, USDA type of financing, there will be an appraisal contingency. The only time there isn't an appraisal contingency is sometimes if a buyer is able to do a 20% down payment, their file will be flagged as eligible for an appraisal waiver, and so they can skip that contingency altogether. However, some buyers might choose to still spend the $700 to $1,000 to have an appraisal done, just to make sure they're not overpaying and major safety and health issues are addressed. So anyways, yeah, just wanted to share some of that information in case you didn't know how that works here in the Portland, Oregon area. I'd love to hear any other questions you have about real estate inspections, or home buying process in general. So have a good day. Bye.